I became aware of people like you who were really had been working on the computer.
Yeah, yeah, directly modeling and designing.
Which was another whole thing. But I came to that. I came to understanding that much later. Like I say, my initial impulse was to get a way to make objects
Sure.
inexpensively and interestingly. So then the question was, how do you get those things? How do you get those clouds from the computer into a makeable form?
And that was a big problem for us because we were working with animation programs that didn't make watertight files.
That was the problem with animation when I explored it. I couldn't see a way. I spoke to a lot of guys. There were a lot of animation, big animation thing going on in Scotland. And I was speaking to a lot of people in Edinburgh. And they just couldn't, that wasn't what they did, you know?
Yeah. It forced me into working with programs like Mastercam, which were very good for running machines, but very difficult to do design work with.
Yeah.
We did find ways of translating files, but it's really when Robert McNeil came out with Rhino that we had the equivalent of Alias, which is what the car industry used.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe that he and his team, I think, may have been involved in that, some of that development. But Rhino was freely available in the beginning as a beta copy. It's still a relatively low-cost CAD program.
Right.
But it has completely transformed small industry.
Yeah.
So everybody else who needed access to the car industry CAD/CAM process, suddenly it transformed everything.
Well, probably that first ARM I had was probably a Rhino software. I'm not sure what at this point, I can't remember, to tell you the truth. But, I mean, things have moved so fast now. I mean, as you know, the acquisition now can be done with a stereo camera, and I mean, it's just...
Even the camera in your cell phone, if you just take enough photographs around an object, it's now photogrammetry.
Really?
The quality is amazing.
Well, you know, that was the big drawback of the program, of the fixed laser. It couldn't acquire undercuts, and so you couldn't get behind the ear, for instance. And of course now you can. Mm-hmm. And so I mean that whole thing it's moved so rapidly. If you want me to focus on the evolution of the Stone Division and
yeah, also maybe some discussion about Seward Johnson's interactions through all of this.
Oh, Seward Johnson, a lovely guy. You know, he had a real zest for life and sculpture. And I got to know him on a personal level, and he was a real bon vivant, and
he was quite a character.
Oh, he was a character, and he never interfered at all. He really didn't. I mean, he said, "You want to do that? Do it." His only instructions to me is make it the best you can. Reach high, he said.
That's the kind of patron you always want.
Yeah, no, he was very good that way. And
so would he come by and check it out?
No. He'd come by sometimes in his, you know, he was a very fancy dresser, and he'd come by and, you know, let's go out and have lunch or something.
Yeah, I was always very surprised that I didn't start seeing these Seward Johnson characters coming off the machines.
He was kind of scared of it. You know, he thought it seemed very foreign to him. He was supportive, but I said, do you want to do anything yourself? I mean, I offered many times to help him kind of translate some of his things, you know, into a stone forms. But he didn't seem to excite him or, you know, touch him in some ways. He was really a casting guy.
Yeah, but he had the atelier just constantly knocking his stuff out.
Exactly. We did also, I mean, we did some very, very fine restoration work too. We did the largest kind of restoration project in New York at that time, which was the Tweed Courthouse. And that's kind of interesting in terms of early development of this process. We're doing these capitals and brackets, and when they came off the Tweed Courthouse, they all looked the same, of course, and when you saw them, we would get a number of them into the studio and look at them, and each one was different, and we realized that they were all these Portuguese and Italian carvers, and each guy had his own little flourishes, and you put them like 50 feet away, and you look at them, they all look the same. It's like the same pattern, but with these little individual flourishes. So we scanned a number of them, and then we kind of made one unified example. And we were able to produce, God, I don't know, we produced, I can't remember the number now, but maybe 100 of these things. And we could produce them at a much lower cost than anyone else. And we used the same material, which was a Cherokee marble out of Georgia. And they were very happy with the thing. I mean, we could really turn them out in no time at all. So that was a big money spinner, and it helped subsidize the work. I mean, my attitude, which I had also told Seward Johnson, so it wasn't a surprise, was that I wanted an open studio. And by that I meant I would do anyone's work. I wasn't going to judge the quality of the work, and I didn't want anyone trying to claim exclusivity. It was going to be a place for anyone who wanted to try their hand or experienced person to come in and have an opportunity to work. So that was the attitude that I instituted for the place. A number of people were keen to kind of capture the place, and I would not allow that. That became a big issue later on, as you
of course
are very well aware.
But I do know that's how I got involved in the first place, is that openness
Yes.
was very welcoming, and it was a place to do the kind of research, like how do you go directly from a CAD program and get it into a CAD
Yes.
system,
Yes.
CAD system.
Exactly. I mean, for me, the diversity of attitudes and different places where people were coming from was developmental and interesting. And I felt it was going to give more breadth to what we were doing. So we went along like gangbusters until 2003. And again, a stock market crash, or I can't remember the exact details. But Seward said to me, we're going broke. And
Well, at least that was the information he was being given. Clearly, he had a financial advisor that had him believing that he needed to get loose of all of his manufacturing.
That's right.
And probably for not-for-profit problems.
Exactly. That's exactly what So, I was given a warning, and then I can remember meeting with the accountants. And one thing I'm proud of is that I met with the accountants, and they wanted to play hardball with me. And they say, okay, we're going to sell everything. And I said, what about, I got all these people, I got like 20 people working. We got to give them something. You got to, what are we going to do for them?
And for those of us who were already clients,
right.
It was like, well, it was nice to have this advance in art and technology, and now it's going to just disappear.
Yeah. Fortunately, we had a big project. Wopo Hollop was doing a project. I believe it was 400 square meters of kind of like a heavy etching of granite slabs of flora that existed in Brooklyn. It was being done for a underpass. It was a something budgeted $1 million or a couple $1 million. It was a significant budget. Anyway, so I got in, and they wanted to fire everyone. So you can lay everyone off. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. They said, well, it's not your choice. This is what you're going to do. And I said, well, if you're prepared to be sued from here to eternity by the state.
Yeah, this is a big client,
a big client, and they got lawyers just, who are on call. Then go ahead and do that. Because I'm not going to complete that work unless you figure out a way that we can, find a satisfactory solution for all these individuals. Well, it turned out I didn't know that the atelier itself was on the chopping block too. So I managed to negotiate severance packages for my people, which they then used as a model for the atelier people. But it was a battle. And at that same time, I think it was 2002, I believe, I got the Technological Achievement Award for the stone industry, of which I was very proud because although it wasn't people that I normally dealt with, we were recognized as having...
Yeah, the industry and recognized that this was a future.
Yeah, recognized what we were doing. And so that was a very nice little moment. So the closing was happening. During that period, there was a lot of jockeying for what was going to happen to the place. And I wanted to keep it going forward. So I approached different individuals who were important clients to me. In that they were serious clients, to see if we couldn't create a co-op or a new corporation. And so that group, which you were part of, Barry Bowl, John Isherwood, Lauren Ewing, and Christoph Spaff.
Was Lawrence Argent, or did he come a little after?
He came a little after, I believe. And there was, I think there was also Michael Reese, who I believe was early, and he was, I think you brought him in.
Right.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think he wasn't in the initial group, but
that's right. That's exactly right. So we got together and got a lawyer, and through a series of actual difficult negotiations, managed to come to an agreement with the accountants at the Johnson Atelier to purchase the facility. And we named the new corporation the Digital Stone Project. That, I think we were founded in 2003, I believe was the...
I believe that's the correct date.
I believe that's the correct date. And Christoph became, I became president, and Christoph became director of the new facility. Christoph had always, I guess I could say, had ambition to take the place over.
Yeah, I think that was pretty clear to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean, I had pretty good management of him during the time that he was my assistant and a shop foreman, but he had a very elevated opinion of his abilities. Sometimes I think that were kind of inflated.
Yes, I think so.
And I kept warning him. He kept saying, well, if I were running it, I'd really make some money. And I kept warning him, no, you don't want to go that way. It's much better to have a lot of clients. And I always welcomed the small client. By that I mean someone who was doing something didn't have high dollar value, because I always felt you always can fit something like that in. So economically, I saw that was an advantage. And I didn't want anyone to be directing through their pocketbook the direction of the facility, because I really felt that it should grow organically. But he was keen on money, and he felt when we went into when he became the director of the facility, he was constantly pressuring for money-making activities, the most money that he'd get. So he was kind of hard to manage.
And it was difficult for a number of us on the board to deal with that.
Yeah.
That was pretty obvious. That seemed to be counterproductive to a creative group, and also a group that saw itself as not for profit.
Yes.
And
with an educational component.
With an educational, and I know that was always my part in the beginning, is that I wanted to see a profit, but I wanted to see the profit rolled into more innovation.
Yes.
And I think he was just interested in the profit, and I think for personal gain. Personally, that's my opinion.
Right. So that was when we formed the new Digital Stone project. I remained in charge for 5 years, I believe, until 2008, if I remember correctly. I managed to keep him in hand, as it were, because I had a history with him.
Sure.
And but I saw the direction that he was trying to take the place. Now, one of the problems with this kind of high-tech endeavor is that you have to train new people, and he was refusing to do that, to bring other people along.
Yes, because he wanted to control the information. That was a big issue, I think, again, for some of us.
Right. Well, what's an issue for me, I brought on a young fellow. I was always seeking out people, and I was, getting H-2 visas and things, bringing people from Romania and from Italy and Russia, Japan, anyone. I mean, it's a kind of rare breed of individuals who can work in this kind of situation. But I got a letter of inquiry from a young fellow, Doug DiGaetano. He was coming out of a school in Minneapolis. What I found interesting about his work was, and when he wrote his letter of introduction, was that he was deeply involved in computer and digital renditions, and
yeah, he was capable of programming.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, let's meet this young guy. And Doug turned out to be really a great hire, and he advanced the work with John Isherwood and Barry Ball, and he was able to devise new ways of milling and new attacks of the program and manipulations. I mean, it actually, after we had been in, I think we had been in business for a while, why Barry Ball approached me and said, I want to hire Doug DiGaetano. And I said, well, why are you asking me? He said, well, I don't want to steal him. I said, well, here's the deal. I mean, you talk to Doug. If Doug says he wants to go and do that, this was at the end of the time when we were transforming ourselves into the Digital Stone project. So I did hire Doug, which was a loss because Doug was the only counter force in the technology to Christoph. And so that put Christoph in a stronger position in terms of demanding things.
And he was adverse to us finding a new Doug.
As a matter of fact, the Romanian fellow, he was very bright and he wanted to learn. Doug started bringing him along, and Christoph was constantly, would interfere and constantly take him away.
Yes, and we actually had directed him to train him, and he literally came to us and said that he wasn't trainable, and we knew that wasn't true.
No, he was a very bright individual.
Yeah.
So we went along for, we created during the 5 years that I was president, we got a mission statement, and it became clear that a big portion of what we were going to do was going to be to bring other people along. The board was pretty much in agreement that this would be a way to bring young aspiring sculptors and architects, to inform them and develop a client base through that training. And I think that's, as with hindsight, that's the direction it's taken. But I wasn't there for the final kind of ending of the and sale of the facility, which that happened just after I resigned as president and John Isherwood took over as president.
Yeah, I think that all sort of happened within 2 to 3 years at the most. It was fairly quick.
Yeah, it happened shortly after I left.
Well, that's when the Coons offer came in with big contracts, and of course Christoph was very excited about it.
I had lunch with Christoph on a couple of occasions, and the topic was Jeff Koons at lunch, and he was asking me, what I thought, and on both occasions I was very adamant that he should not get in bed with Jeff Koons. For the reasons you mentioned, first of all, the history. The second thing was that I felt that someone taking full possession and wanting to be proprietary was against the total ethos that I was about. And I thought it was also just on a business level, I thought it was a very poor decision too, because then you're dependent upon one individual, and if you get into a conflict with him or they don't like what you do, then...
And especially if he's powerful,
yes,
he's going to usurp anything that you want.
Exactly. And Christoph was, he was so keen to make money. He had this notion, he expressed it to me, his notion that he was going to become rich real fast. And I thought it was wrong-headed, and I thought it would also be fatal. And in fact, it did turn out to be all those things. I can't imagine myself working under the conditions for someone like that.